After 43 months of bond buying, adding up to 2.4 trillion euros, the ECB could be set to announce when it might start winding back QE. According to the FT, 22% of eurozone government debt is on the ECB books. So what would the end of easy money mean for markets? Joining me now to discuss is Florian Hense, European economist at Berenberg. Florian, thanks so much for joining us. Are you expecting a formal decision from the ECB about ending its net asset purchases, or just a tweak to guidance?
Well, we expect a tweak to guidance. I mean, basically, the spectrum is sort of no decision at all, or actually a formal decision, and we are sort of in between. That the ECB will not formally decide on actually scaling back the asset purchases after September, but that they will sort of lean. Or suggest that they will lean towards that, or expect that they will do that. But this sort of the formal decision would come in July.
Now, we've been seeing some weakness in the economic data out of Europe recently. Do you think it's temporary or potentially a warning sign of something more sinister? And do you think the eurozone economy still needs low rates and QE?
Well, it's definitely more than just a blip. When sort of the first trade tensions arose throughout the first quarter, the question was really, okay, is this just a blip or a longer slowdown? It's more than just a temporary slowdown. We think that these trade tensions are probably going to drag on. And the base case is that most eurozone exporters, especially the German ones, will just get used to sort of this new normal of slightly more protectionist measures. And at the end of the day, I mean, the US economy is doing pretty well this year because of the the tax reform. So some of these eurozone exporters will probably not really realize that demand has weakened. So it's going to drag on a bit longer, but we think for the inflation outlook, which is important for the ECB, net purchases can be scaled down in October. At the end of the day, the monetary stance as such remains relatively accommodative, with rates being at 0% and probably staying there for at least until June next year.
Now, you mentioned the trade war concerns there. Is that the biggest risk to your base case, and what are some of the other risks that we should be watching out for?
Yes, I mean, this is one of the two biggest risks, and the other one is sort of Italy. It seems that sort of markets have calmed slightly because we heard some members of the cabinet coming out with some statements which sounded pretty sort of EU-file, saying Italy needs structural reforms and they're going to abide by the fiscal rules. I mean, these were comments by the finance minister, which would call the shots. But obviously the question is, there are so many people that have a different interest than abiding by these fiscal rules. They've made promises which are difficult to basically fulfill if you stay within these fiscal rules. So that is definitely a story which we will have to watch for the next couple of months, and only if sort of we get if the calm in Italy is continuing, then and the trade tensions are sort of simmering but not escalating, we could see the eurozone sort of recovering at the later stages of this year, Q4. I would put it as the first quarter.
Now, it wasn't just the words from the economy minister in Italy which spurred gains in the euro in the last week. It was also the rhetoric we heard from the ECB's Peter Pret. How important were his words?
Well, they have weight because, I mean, obviously he's the chief economist. He's probably the biggest proponent of QE, so you always have to watch what he says also, because he lays down the economic backdrop and the policy propositions to his governing council colleagues. But at the end of the day, I mean, what was he saying? He was probably saying the obvious, that they are discussing the scaling back of net asset purchases. They've probably done so, be behind closed doors in the past. So it was kind of saying the obvious. But on the other hand, I mean, yeah, saying the obvious for the ECB is probably a new thing. So it was definitely a deliberate move, probably to kind of massage markets that steps to policy normalization are coming, that the doves in the governing council are actually fine with an end to net asset purchases at the end of the year, and probably also to just draw the attention away from those net asset purchases towards the policy rates, and that maturing bonds are being reinvested for at least the next 2 or 3 years.
And do you think that the ECB is suddenly speeding up its policy normalisation here? And does it really make a difference whether the ECB adjusts its forward guidance in June or July?
I don't think that they are speeding up. Probably it doesn't make a big difference whether they move this week or July. I mean, we don't think that the environment or the backdrop has changed dramatically, or there wouldn't be any reason to speed up that process. But on the other hand, if they would move this week rather than 6 weeks later, end of July, it would kind of underline that they are pretty confident that we are actually just in a temporary slowdown, and that the trade tensions are not escalating. The confrontation with Italy between the EU is also not going to escalate. So demand growth is going to pick up throughout the second half of this year, and we see that continued adjustment of inflation towards sort of the 2% the ECB is liking. So not a major difference whether to move in June or July, but kind of that indirect impact.
Okay, Florian, thanks so much for your time today. That was Florian Hense, European economist at Berenberg, joining us down the line from his office. Thanks so much for watching IGTV. I'm Victoria Scholar, and we'll see you very soon.
Subscribe to IG for educational content, company insight, financial analysis, and expert commentary.